All right, with no further ado, it's one of my favorite people in the world and the voice of so many amazing moments in so many different sports. He's also just a total mensch and a mentor and big brother of mine in this industry. He's been really good to me over the years, and he's been good enough to give us some time despite his season finally being over. NBC Sports, the voice of everything, Mr. Mike Tirico. How we doing, sir?
Look, Trey, like the postseason, my postseason has now arrived, and so it's a good thing you're getting me early because we're 3 days away from this gray beard and all this stuff, and a week of just shutting it down.
You're going to look like Tom Hanks in Castaway soon.
Well, not exactly, but you get the point.
What's it like when you're done, but the rest of the games aren't done? It's just like, I guess Troy and Joe are feeling it this week too. You called your
Yeah.
last game, and the show goes on, and we all move right along. But like, we're done hearing your voice for the next 8 months.
The weird part is, honestly, is that it is, and it's not like we're building a building or we're not building bridges or digging ditches, but it is work, right? And it's every day. As you know, there's no off day in the NFL season when you do what we do. So for, gosh, 20 weeks plus a couple of preseason weeks times 7 days, so 145 to 50 days. Every single day is something. Watch GMFB, listen to a pod, start building my boards, add a game, talk to folks, and then you just drop off the cliff. So
That's
like,
it.
see, I got on the flight on Monday and I go, okay, I don't have to start thinking about, okay, have we had these teams? What's the deal? How much carryover stuff? What's that nugget on Liam Cohen that I didn't get in during the regular season? That like, damn, every game you walk out of and you go, oh, I can't believe I didn't get to tell this story or that story, right? So you start thinking about that. And it's just a daily process. So when it ends, it is really like you're hitting a wall, falling off a cliff, all that stuff. And you rediscover important things like, oh, I've got 1,000 thank you notes to write.
Yep.
Oh, the registration for the car needs to be done. All that stuff that you put in suspended animation, you start digging out.
I always say this, and Daniel Jeremiah is the best. We do the draft together.
Right.
We both talk about this. A lot of people talk about season being over, go to Vegas, whatever it is you do to celebrate. Daniel says the Saturday night shower after the draft when he's done with 3 days, and he says it is the most rewarding thing of
Yeah.
his year to just know I could just it's all over. I did it. It's done, and we could start anew. But like, I guess that's how you almost feel when you land back in Michigan after doing another incredible TV moment, that Rams Eagles
It was
incredible
fun.
divisional round game.
Fun and good snow. And I'll tell you, so that Monday I got home and I sat down and you just kind of start doing some basic stuff and go, oh, national championship games tonight. And,
Who knew?
Chris Fowler's been a friend since 1991. So this is my, and Herbie a couple years after that. So these are two of my best pals in the business. And I just texted them, good luck, have a great game. And I was just going to sit back and watch the game and I don't have to divide attention to
Nope.
maybe work on a few notes while I'm doing this. Because usually my Mondays are you get home, you have a nice dinner, my wife and I sit down and start to watch the Monday night game. And then I open up the laptop and I start to get a little bit ahead on the team. But just to sit and watch a game was just so much fun. It's relaxing. But you're right, Peter. Like you miss not being in the mix
You
next
want
week. And
that
then
assignment, no doubt.
until you sit down next week and then watch the games and I just watch those guys just do it and have fun. And next year, fortunately, is our Super Bowl season. So next year we only not only have the Super Bowl next year, but we have the Olympics, which start right at the end of the Super Bowl. The Winter Olympics in Italy are right the Friday of Super Bowl weekend in Santa Clara is the start of the Olympics in Italy. So we're going to be cranking through. So I'm enjoying every second of these couple of weeks because next year that plus we start with the NBA on NBC. So we're going to be cranking away all fall and winter next year. So I'm enjoying these couple of days for sure.
And I have to think that this year was not just football because you were in Paris for the Olympics and it
Yeah.
carried right through and you were the voice of that. And obviously there was a lot of fanfare over Snoop's appearances, but beyond Snoop, I mean, you were unbelievable. And that's not a 2-day assignment. And then you go right from there into training camp, into preseason, and then boom, football hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, this was the longest run that I know I've had just because it started with really from the Kentucky Derby in May through because you had the couple of Triple Crown races, the Indy 500, and then June was all the Olympic trials, making Team USA, which spilled right into the U.S. Open, British Open golf, which is really the Open. But then that was right into the Olympics, and the run just got home, had a week off. We had a family friend get married that weekend after the Olympics and before our preseason game, and then off we went. So it's been a long run, but it's been great. It was such a good year too. Sometimes you get in ruts where you don't have great games. We got lucky on Sunday night. We had so many good and exciting games, like you said. We got to wrap up with an even more exciting game than
Yeah.
the first Eagles Rams game that we had, which was Barkley going for 255. He kind of does a top five all time playoff rushing appearance in the playoffs in the snow at home in Philly with the Rams coming down the field with a chance to win the game. It was really, really one of those cool, memorable postseason games.
Broadcaster question for you.
Yeah.
So there's the 4A cruise, obviously, and we're down to the final four
Right.
games, so you each get it. That Sunday night, you're calling Tampa versus Washington. You don't know the assignment yet for next week. When do you find out that, hey, we don't have Bills versus Ravens? Obviously, that's going to CBS, but we actually have an early window Sunday game, which is not
Right.
our natural place. When do you find out all that information? Obviously, Mike North and the schedule gods are working on it. Do you get a note past you during the game, or is it after you're already back in the hotel?
So we usually announce it before we go off air. So I'll leave it unnamed. I'll get a friend from one of the networks text me like middle of the second quarter. Hey, do you know yet? Because usually the league knows, but they really keep it so that only one or two people know. So I didn't know until our game in Tampa ended, until Zane Gonzalez doiks it in. Only then did I know where we were going. At some point, usually right before that, you may know the options, or we're going to be a Sunday early game, Sunday early or Sunday late. It all varies. I think if that result of that game changes, we are in a different place for a different game. So it is kind of fun. So there have been, usually it's in that break before that our producer Rob Hyland will say, "Hey, here's a peek at the schedule. We're going to show it coming out of the next break." You just kind of take it, and that's the same thing with Week 18 too.
Yeah, does it
We,
feel
we,
like the tournament reveal show? Like I feel like it has
does
to.
a little bit. Like I wish we didn't have to fly through it in 30 seconds because you want to start digesting it because okay, the early window this will be decided, the late window that'll be decided, and you kind of know what game is left at the end. It is fun, and for us. We want to know where we're going, but you also want to
Yes.
are they teams you know really well, teams you've had, all that stuff, and so it makes for a lot of fun. But you don't find out until really the end of that Tampa game. I did not know where we were going, and Sunday at 3 o'clock is a little bit different. You become creatures of habit, right? If you did Good Morning Football at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it would feel weird. Right.
Totally.
So for us doing a 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon game, I was lost all day. Like, wait
It's
a
like
minute.
your different time zone, right? Like what?
I truly at 7:15 in the morning said, okay, this game kicks off 5 hours before normal, so right now it should feel like 12:15. I just want to make sure I had like the right stuff ready, so I wasn't panicking around the hotel trying to get ready. But it was cool, and the weather timing was incredible with the snow in Philadelphia to start dry, begin snow, have a changeover. It was so much fun, such a
All
fun
right.
game.
One of the coolest things about being a voice in the NFL is you get to speak with these players and these coaches the week of the games. Now, it used to be you'd land there on a Friday, you're going to practice. Now, a little bit more Zoom than in person, but I imagine you still get to see these guys. Give us one thing you've gotten to know about Jaden Daniels that the world
Oh,
should know,
okay.
having done his game, obviously, Sunday
Yeah.
night against the Buccaneers.
So we
And the
we
Falcons game, yeah.
And the Falcons game. So we go in on Friday still and go to the home team practice. I think I tore my Achilles week 11, so I missed like 2 weeks, 3 weeks of getting to Friday practice. And I felt lost. I love doing it. I love sitting in the
So
same
do I.
room with people. And not only that, but being at practice and getting a chance to talk to the people around the franchise, right? And that's what helps give you if not that nugget, but that feel and that confidence to say things. So that's the preamble. Let me go backwards. Our one preseason game was New England, Washington. And you sit there and you go, okay, we've just come off the Olympics, and now we're going to turn around and do a preseason game, the last preseason game, where usually people don't play, but it's two teams we do not have on our Sunday night football schedule.
Not
And
once.
I remember when Dan Quinn got up, he's like, "Hey, I hope we end up seeing you guys before the year's over." I was thinking the same thing. I hope we're going to flex into a Commanders game. both Chris and I walked out of there on the drive back to our hotel. Like, this team feels like they could do something. Now, did we
Mm.
see them making the NFC Championship game? No, but we both tabbed them as like the team on the rise, that team that had something unique going. And man, it was great. So the point to your question, we did sit with Jaden Daniels. He didn't play in that preseason game, but we still met with him because he was the guy. And man, did you see why the whole building was in belief that this guy could be really good right away. 55 starts, Arizona State, 2 LSU. So he's done the leave one environment and system, go to a new coaching staff, new teammates, win the room over, win the building over. The work habits that a guy who I think is really someone who deserves a lot of credit in both college and pro football this year, but is not getting it, is
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kelly is hard on quarterbacks. Ask any of them who played for him, but he makes them better. And he really helped Jaden Daniels go from here to here, just in the largesse of it, of how you go about game planning, how you go about situational football. And, Brian Kelly and the LSU staff made it possible for Jaden Daniels, done academically, essentially, his last year at LSU, to get in the gym in the middle of the night and get ready and VR stuff. So that
Oh,
virtual
it's real.
reality concept. And he brought all those great, incredible habits to his meetings. He brought them all to his practices and he brought them all to Washington. And Washington gave him the ability to kind of expand and do that. So yeah, we saw a little bit of why this could be really good. And there's no way you could forecast it would be a championship game. But just to close the thought on Brian Kelly, Notre Dame is not in a position to play for the championship if Brian Kelly didn't elevate that place all the way through the end. And then he hired Marcus Freeman as his
Mm.
defensive coordinator.
Yes, he did.
Marcus Freeman, 3 years in, takes him to a championship. NFL team saying, hey, this would be a guy we should look at or talk to somewhere down the line sooner, if not later. Brian Kelly deserves a lot of credit for some of the success stories of this football season and is not getting a lot of it, but Jaden Daniels is one of those.
That's awesome. You've been in that premier Sunday night seat for the entire Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow era. You've seen these guys enter the league and play their biggest games on those Sunday night regular season afternoons and evenings. What makes Josh Allen a little bit different this year than maybe years prior?
Peter, he just took that step from here to here of greatness growth. And what does greatness growth mean? It means I got the building. All right, I got the whole building now. It's not, and he was so good about not saying it's Stephon Diggs or anything like that. Just the oxygen in the building changes
Mm-hmm.
every year. Stephon Diggs' greatness, his ability to bring the Bills so many wins, was a little bit of that receiver me attitude. And that helped give this team, when Josh Allen was
A little bit of
younger,
edge.
you got it. Exactly, man. And now like Josh looks around the room and it's him. And he's got to be that guy. And he has. But now that doesn't mean Deion Dawkins doesn't have an
Yeah,
impact
yeah,
or
totally.
Bernard on defense or all the Von Miller's still in the building and still in the room, right? So I'm not saying this is a one man show, but I think the fact that Josh is able to read the room and say, okay, I know I'm really, really, really good. I know it's my time. I've got to lead these guys. And he's got a little bit of rascal in him. He's the fun guy in the room. And you get that every time you sit with Josh. There's a laugh, it's a humor, it's never an edge, it's always good. But when it comes down to the business, he's got the Buffaloes to do it. So
Yeah.
I love the way he took that step this year. And that's one of the things that you can see. Okay, it's not just Lamar, Mahomes, Burrow. It's can you carry the Bills franchise and this generation of Bills Mafia? The younger fans only know about Jim and Thurman and Bruce and Andre Reed from T-shirts and sweatshirts that their parents still wear and all that stuff, and the
And
names up in the
ESPN
ring.
documentaries,
Right,
that's it.
exactly.
40 for 30 for 30s.
And Marv Levy's singing his "Go Bills" song that he wrote, right, and all of that. I think Josh is their generation's guy, and I'd love to see it. I do think it's the most fascinating thing we're living in a macro part of this NFL gen is that Lamar and Burrow and Josh remind me of Ernie Els
Mm.
and Phil Mickelson of they're like not good, they're exceptional they're living at a time when one of the best to ever do it is in their way, and they've all got to try to beat Mahomes every single year. And usually they go over when it matters the most. And can Josh get that one notch this year? That's the most fascinating thing in the macro to me that's happening in our NFL right now.
It's so interesting because it's so easy to do the NBA thing, and we talk about Barkley and Malone and
Right.
Ewing and
Yeah.
Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. That these guys were all amazing, but they just happened to play in that era. The golf thing is something I haven't thought of yet. I thought that's a really good analogy. You go into this game and it's a Sunday and it's going to be on Sunday night. Is there a little bit of pang of jealousy that your voice won't be on the call for this monster game and it's going to be Nance and Romo?
We all want to do a great game, right? In those legacy games, but the wheel spins. We all get our chance, and especially because these guys know their season ends every year, if not a Super Bowl season, with the AFC Championship game or the NFC Championship game. And and what's the balance? The balance is Sunday night. We usually get a really good game. Sometimes those guys will get the short end of the schedule and have a 1 o'clock game that's not as high profile as a primetime game. So that's fine. It's and the thing is that I enjoy is that all these guys are friends, acquaintances, whatever you want to say. And I love to watch Jim and Tony do a game. Jim's been wonderful and kind to me since I was in Syracuse in school. And Jim
Wow.
was coming and doing games with Billy Packer. And I was working at a CBS station. I got to meet Jim and interview him in the late 80s and early 90s. And we're represented by the same person, Sandy Montag. So Jim's a 30-year acquaintance and friend, and I've gotten to know Tony over the years, and same thing with Kevin and Tom too. I'm just excited to hear those guys do these games. As a matter of fact, Kevin and I were texting before the game in Detroit Saturday, and then he texted me after the game about our game on Sunday. So you know this. Look at we talk about it all the time. We're all friends who do this,
Yes.
and we all swim in the same water and root for each other. So yeah, would you love to be there? Of course. But then when it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you're like the rest of America, you're eating what you want, you're drinking what you want, you're watching great football, and you're watching great people call the game. It's all good. We all got our swing at the pitch every once in a while.
You know how fond I am of your work and you as a man, obviously, but some of your calls have been legendary in just the last couple of years alone. I want to play you a call from last year's wild card round. It's the Rams and the Lions, and the Rams all but wrapped, the Lions all but wrapped this thing up. And Chris Collinsworth kind of gave you the stage to talk a little bit about what this meant for the city of Detroit. Take a listen.
Mike, you live in this area. Give me some idea of what this is.
There's a term around here, SOL. Same old Lions. They always find a way to screw it up. And Dan Campbell changed that mentality, changed that with the people who brought in. They've lost their last 9 playoff appearances. And it's a team that believes in themselves. And they didn't have a great second half, but this will be one of the most memorable nights in Detroit football for that 89-year-old and the 62,000 others here. One more knee and business is done. And Detroit, for the first time in 32 years, your Lions have won a playoff game. Have at it.
Mike, hearing that back, what's your reaction?
I wasn't expecting Chris to do that, which is why Chris is the best to work with because he'll do things at times that are unplanned. But also, like that's Chris's moment to kind of say what he should be saying. But I think he understood that having lived in Michigan for 25 years, I had a different read on the fans, the people, and I thought seeing Kirk Herbstreit after the championship game on Monday
Very
night get
emotional.
emotional talking about Ohio State was a reminder because Scott Van Pelt used the line as Kirk was getting emotional. Everybody's from somewhere, and I'm not from here. I grew up a Jets fan, right, and moved here 25 years ago. So I think as you get older and do this, you have that professional layer of non-emotional attachment. But my family, they're Lions fans. All the people I know. I mean, you go to the cleaners and drop off your shirts on Monday after you come home from Sunday, and all people want to talk about is what about Dan Skipper being eligible and all that stuff. So, what it means to the area is what I think I've got the connection with, not just the long-suffering fans, but a city that had been a pinata for some, a city that got beat up, and to see it turnaround and parallel with the success with the Lions and the downtown area coming back. I just had a really good feel for it, a read for it, and I was really blessed and lucky to do both of those games. That will
Yeah.
be all-time memories for me, just to be in that stadium the night the Jared Goff chant began. That was the night that it was given birth, and to just to be able to help an audience understand it better. And as Sheila Hamp, the owner of the Lions, reminded me when I saw her a couple of weeks ago, the Lions are 7-0 on NBC when I've done the games going back to the end of the Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay era.
That was an amazing
So
game.
I said, I've got nothing to do with it, but I'll happily take the credit for it.
That was it. Ben Johnson calls a hook and lateral, and then they throw a fourth down pass to DJ Chark to eliminate the Packers, and you were on that call.
And that was a Schrager GMFB trivia question.
You got it.
And I think that the answer may have been D, because somebody, I don't know if Jamie brought it up, somebody brought up that oftentimes Schrager will just humor you with choice D, which has now opened the door for Schrager to put the right answer in D.
Yes.
You see, you're a great play caller. If they think they've seen this 10 times, give it to them the opposite way.
I love that you watch our show. It blows me away that anyone watches our show, and the fact you
It's the
have the
best.
recall to do that, I so appreciate it. Another call was from the year beforehand. Lamar Jackson's not in the game because of injury, so Snoop Huntley is the quarterback, and then Sam Hubbard makes the play that made Cincinnati a rock and roll concert. Here's your call from that game.
Put them right around Huntley. He reaches. Oh, that ball's out. That's live. Back the other way. Sam Hubbard, the Cincinnati kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30, the 20. He will score. Sam Hubbard, who grew up a Bengals fan, won a state championship at Moeller High School, championship at Ohio State, makes the massive play to take it the other way and give the Bengals the lead.
Mike, your thoughts here in that callback?
Well, so we had Cincinnati in the wild card game the year before with Drew Brees. We did the Cincinnati Raiders playoff game. Bengals on their way to the Super Bowl that year. Who would have thought, right? And what was interesting with that was you do the research for that game and you're in, and Dan Horde is the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cincinnati Bearcats. So all Cincy things I kind of have a little feel for, because I've got one of my buddies who I went to Syracuse with, who's a part of the Bengals world for the last 20 plus years. So for some reason during that wild card game prep, we were talking about Hubbard and Cincinnati roots and how rare it is and how much a championship would mean to a guy who had just been in Ohio. And living in Michigan, you know, the people in Ohio, it means so much to them to contribute, whether it's the Buckeyes, but also the high school football in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is one of those, you're from, where you're from, they tell you
high school.
Your high school or the parish that you went to church, right? That's the Cincinnati thing, you know? So I just had in my mind his Cincinnati ties. And I hadn't written anything down, but that was the first thing that popped in my mind when he got the ball. And it just one of those, he got the ball in the right spot that his number was facing me where I was in the booth. So I could see right away it was him at the 15-yard line. And I just popped in my head. I had no plan. It wasn't on my board, Cincinnati kid or anything like that. And those are the fun ones when it just pops in your head and you just say what you're thinking and feeling and prepared for. So it was nice to have the backstory ingrained in my mind that when it happened, we had something, and it was good that he ended up scoring on the play. Made it a lot of fun.
So good. All right, I'm going to wrap with a couple really fun questions that I'm looking for answers that might not be what you would expect. Now, I've always said one of the most entertaining production meetings I've ever been a part of was for an irrelevant St. Louis Rams game against maybe the Tennessee Titans, and Greg Williams came in as defensive coordinator under Jeff Fisher and went on an hour-long talk about defense and the power of crystals. And people ask me, who is the production meeting guy? I'm like, I don't know where you start or where you end, but Greg Williams is on my list. It's just sit back and enjoy. Who's that guy for you? Might not have to. It doesn't have to be Andy Reid. Give me that off the radar guy that you just love listening to talk football.
So the best players were the best production meetings. I always thought. Like if you ask me who gave the best production meetings, the elite quarterbacks, especially when it was Manning and Brady. Peyton, who controls everything at the line of scrimmage or everything else. I'll never forget being at ESPN in those days. And gosh, I'm doing the game with Gruden and maybe Jaws or just Gruden. Susie Colbert's a sideline reporter, and Peyton's telling me about how a receiver is going to have a role and it's somebody who had been on the practice squad, right?
Okay.
So it's like so and so, so and so, and we're gonna be. We're gonna be calling up this guy, Mike. You should make sure you're ready for him.
He's guiding you.
And then he kind of goes. Then the guy goes, John. He's got a really good wiggle, bottom of his routes, really kind of like Stokely kind of route running. And Susie, he's got a great backstory. And I'm like, oh my god, like Peyton has just produced the production meeting by telling all three of those things got on the air. So that's like the nirvana of production meetings. But I'm gonna tell you a couple that Sean Payton can give you.
Can we talk about the flip card with Sean Payton?
Oh,
so explain what that is, because I did enough. Sean Payton comes in, and what a flip card is for the listeners, it's every player on the roster. And tell him what Sean Payton will do for you. I don't know what the point is, but he goes position by position and will tell you everything you need to know about each one of these guys. But go on, Mike, tell him.
Now, we'll move over to line 3 and see Gotsis here. Okay, here's what he's going to do. And Sean gives you detail on every single player. He kind of runs the clock out on you. You have no time to ask any questions at some point, but he gives you all the detail. Mike Tomlin is priceless because Mike gives you not just great answers, but he also gives you such good detail along the way on who's going to play and why. I love, like, you'll get to a guy and go, he's our jet sweeper guy. He'll run the tricks and all that stuff. And it's just in Mike Tomlin-esque tones and terms. He goes through the flip card and does that. So they're all really good production meetings. I'm trying to think if there's one that kind of stands
off
out.
the radar guy. Give me someone like, I just said Greg Williams, but like, Jeff Fisher used to show up in leather jackets and do the thing. So like,
right. No, Dan Campbell is like, you can't keep him in his seat. But, he sits there and he starts rocking. He starts rocking during the meeting, and you start going back and forth. Now he's moving around in his chair, and he's grabbing his coffee, and he's got his dip and the whole thing. He is so on brand for production meetings. But no, the best ones are the best guys. They really are. So my favorite production meeting story is Belichick, who notoriously gave you very little.
Yeah.
Right, and that's been told for years. It wasn't bad. When you got to know Bill, it wasn't bad. You had to know what you were getting into and what you were trying to get out of it. So it's Thanksgiving night. We're doing a game in Minnesota, I want to say. And the Patriots are playing, and we're getting nothing out of Bill, right? And so Melissa Stark is going to ask everybody about Thanksgiving, because in case somebody wins their turducken leg or things like that. You want to make it a Thanksgiving. It's a family show more than an XO show. So we start asking Belichick, and Belichick goes into this great detail on Army-Navy being the Saturday after Thanksgiving in Philadelphia, and what did Thanksgiving Day mean to you? And of course his dad coaching at Navy. Well, Thanksgiving was the last practice. It was the last practice at Navy. And give us detail about the parade and the train up to Philadelphia. And I mean, he went in for it was the greatest 15-minute history lesson on Army-Navy, played in Philadelphia for Thanksgiving. Maybe 8 seconds of it got on the air. But he was so into the storytelling part of it, and with detail, like, I never really had Thanksgiving dinner. Like, Thanksgiving was just the last day of practice for my dad with Navy, because Friday was, the season ended on Saturday with the Army-Navy game. So, like, that's a day I'll just remember just sitting there and going, how cool is this? Like, I'm hearing the 1960s history of Army-Navy from arguably the greatest football coach of my lifetime, and I'm getting a football education that I will never, ever, ever lose, because Melissa Stark asked about what's your favorite Thanksgiving side. And that's why those meetings are so informative, yet so fun, and you build bonds with people along the years. So you come in and you start talking to them about all this random stuff, and it's all part of the community that you live and you love. When we go to the owners' meetings or the Super Bowl, and that whole community is in one room, it's really pinch yourself that you are a part of this cool fraternity.
It's really special. I know you've got a relationship with Brady as well. He's in his first year. Obviously, he and Kevin are the team, and the Fox guys have them locked and loaded. Have you passed any notes along to Tom? Have you exchanged any notes with Tom? I know how much he values his friendship with you.
Tom's great. Tom I've reached out. Look, I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so Brady's connection with Michigan has always been cool. And we had stories about Lloyd Carr over the years. So whenever I'd have Tom for a production meeting, if I saw Coach Carr, who was his coach at Michigan, we'd share stories about that because Coach Carr had been in the area and his grandkids know my kids and all that stuff. And we've gotten to know them. So that's always been a common connection and built a bond there over the years. But Tom was great. Tom, I shared, here's what I do for a game, Tom. Anything you need, because Tom had been so helpful to me and to any of us who did this job all of his years in the NFL. When you didn't get a ton of information out of New England, Tom was great in production meetings
Mm.
and really helped you do your job. So I always felt the least I could do for anybody who comes along after, especially if they helped us, can I be an olive branch? Is there anything I can help you with? Answer a question from the side that I do this on. And Tom, I shared a couple of things with Tom, not much. He's done his own thing. He figured out from typical Tom Brady, or outworking everybody,
Yeah.
getting the most information, how to go about it, and he'll go about it and probably adjust it as he goes through this year and on into next year. But I've traded texts with him a few times. I've enjoyed listening to him. I really have. I've enjoyed listening to his view on things. I love his grades of throws right away because
Yeah.
if Tom Brady says it's an A plus throw, it's an A plus throw.
It is. You're not going to question it.
Yeah, not at all. So I've enjoyed that, and we one thing that happens with all of us, we'll get in these weird sequences. Like I'll go 3 weeks in a row where I follow Ian Eagle and Charles Davis, or Chris and I will follow
So you're
Ian
watching
Charles.
their
So
game from the
yeah,
week
so
before.
right for the people who don't know, like Monday and Tuesday, one of the first things we do is go back and watch the entire game broadcast from the last week, at least that I do, just because you want to hear themes, you want to watch the game, storylines. You don't want to repeat the same
Yeah.
anecdote because, the fan who's watching the Panthers every week, okay, dude, I've heard this 3 times in a row. I don't need to hear it again. So if you do repeat it, you say, hey, a lot of you are familiar with the story of, for those who aren't, just to acknowledge the fact that, okay, here's the story. I'm going to tell it again. So for whatever reason, I think we had 3 weeks in a row where we followed Kevin and Tom with our game the following week, and I got to listen every week and just sent Tom a text. Like I so enjoyed listening to him call the Minnesota Green Bay game because we had
Yeah.
Minnesota Detroit the next week. It's fun. Our business has become so criticized because pick up Twitter. I hate. Why did you say
Yep.
this? You said it was second. That was third. Yeah, that's right. That's fine. That's part of life. We get it. But what I do respect a lot, Peter, and you know it because you're around it and you're a nerd of it a little bit.
Hmm.
I don't think our job has ever been done at a higher level by more people. Like every game you watch is really, really well done. Like I learned stuff when Mark Sanchez and Adam Amin are doing a
Hmm.
game. Like, oh man, that's really good. I never thought of that. And we're all constantly listening to each other and rooting for each other. It's the fun part of doing this that I never imagined would be the case, and maybe wasn't the case 25, 30 years ago. But whether it's we've all come up through the same series of places, or we've interacted, or there are more jobs than ever doing this. I love the fraternity of play-by-play analyst reporters that we all are, and you become friends with people like Charles Davis, like Laura Oakman, Ian Eagle, and I've known each other for 35 years. So that's what this joy is, and the fact that nobody has any property like the NFL
Yeah.
that people watch in these numbers. You just are very appreciative of what you do and that you get a chance to do it on a regular basis.
There's a cool parallel. I talked to Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive
Mm,
coordinator of the Commanders, this week, and I said, 3rd and 5, you're throwing the ball to John Bates with the season
right,
on the line.
right.
He goes, McVay called that same play with Jordan Whittington earlier this season when they played the Cardinals. It's a fullback corner route, and I saw it and I said, "Oh gosh, you put the fullback in there, and then you have him run a corner." He's like, and I'm like, "You're okay with me saying that on air?" He's like, "Dude, it was a great play call. We used it. It worked." He's like, "Of course,"
Right, exactly.
but that's the same thing with us. It's like
Yes,
if Dan Orlovsky or Kevin Clark or Ryan
yes.
Clark makes a good comment, like I'm not so insecure to not say, "Oh no, I'm going to take this from that comment because that was a really good point."
And give the person credit who says it when they say it, and do what they do. Look, people aren't sitting there with a scorecard. They're sitting there enjoying it. I always remind young broadcasters what we do, and Gruden helped me understand this a lot. What we do is entertainment, and Lee Corso too. When I got to work with Lee back in the '90s, what we do is entertainment. It is very important business. It is your team. It's your fantasy team. it's your daily wager, right?
Yeah. Your parlay.
It's your parlay trying to make sure that your running back gets 10 yards in each quarter. Whatever it is, you are being at some level entertained, and we're responsible for some of that entertainment. So we got to do that on a regular basis, and to understand that we are all collectively doing this is pretty fun.
Okay, my last question to you, because
Yes.
it's two pieces. It goes back to your years as the worldwide leader, but I think of icons. I think of people that you've worked with. Give me your best John Gruden story.
Oh my God. Okay. Sure. It may not be the best, but it's my favorite. It's when we go to Philadelphia and the Eagles are not practicing on Saturday for a Monday night game, Friday for a Sunday game, but they're doing like the spa day, is quote unquote, right? It's like massage, get your body right, and then they're gonna
Yep.
be there on Saturday. And now Chip Kelly's come in, and now they have these protein shakes. So every day somebody gets a shake, and it's based on what your body needs. So the Schrager shake may be different in week 8 than it was in week 14 because you've had a cold, you had an injury, there's something, right? So this constant analysis is telling you this is what you need. So you're getting somebody's making shakes. So Gruden goes, "Hey, can we get a blender? Can we get a blender in the booth?" I'm like, it's very similar to the feeling I had when I was sitting on the set with Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. Like, what the hell am I doing? I just want to call 3rd and 5, and like now my man's bringing a blender to the booth, and it's a meme that shows up every once in a while out
Yep.
there. We're in the booth, we're in Philly, and John, the Eagles go up like by 17 points, and John goes, "Hey, we should do the blender bit now." And it was telling a story, but it was in an entertaining way. And so John brings the blender. He's throwing bananas and strawberries in this blender. And he's just being the mad scientist. And it just reminded me that every great coach is a teacher.
Yep.
And that was just John's way of giving you an unforgettable moment to say, you know what? This coach is doing something very different. I could have done the story. Hey, no, John, each guy gets his own protein shake on Saturday, and they're just trying to make sure that they're chemically balanced properly and blah, 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 sports science. And no, but he did it with a blender, and it's still in my head 14 years later, whatever the heck it is. That to me was one of a
That's
thousand
great.
examples of John being as good a teacher as I've ever been around.
I'm going to ask you one more, and I'm going to preface it with my story, which is so limited. I've never worked with this guy. I'm in the Arizona airport, delayed for a flight Monday morning after the Super Bowl, after the Patriots beat the Seahawks on the Malcolm Butler play.
Yeah. Okay.
Delayed flight back to LaGuardia, delayed 4 hours, sitting at the gate, no fancy lounge. I'm sitting there. I'm a nobody. No one cares. This larger than life presence wearing a giant, what I would describe as a sun hat or a sombrero, comes rumbling down the hallway with people asking for photos and autographs. And then he leans this huge 6'5", 200 something pound body, leans right into my shoulder and just says, "You got the modern day Earl Campbell in the backfield, and you're throwing the ball to lock it?"
Yeah. What?
And it was
Boomer.
Chris Berman over my
Exactly.
shoulder.
Exactly.
Give me, and I'm like that, and give me your best Chris Berman story.
Yeah. I think it's there are so many. First off, my favorite one was he's doing West Coast baseball Wednesday nights on ESPN when ESPN had doubleheaders on Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday night baseball. And I'm breaking and doing Sports Center. It's 1991, probably August maybe. And the Mariners bullpen was stunningly bad on Wednesday nights in 91 and 92. I can't tell you how many nights we sat on the set and the Mariners gave up 3 in the 8th, 5, 4 in the ninth to send it to extra innings at 2:08 in the morning, right? So I'm sitting on the set, and after those doubleheaders, there wasn't an 11 o'clock or a 2 a.m. sports channel at the time. You do one show at 1:30, and so sometimes it'd be one from the 11, one from the 2. So I did that show with Bob Lee. And it's the middle of summer, everybody's off.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe the first or second show I'm doing with Bob, and Boomer's out there doing the game. May have been with Jerry Royce, may have been his analyst. And Bob goes, "Sports Center's next. Bob Lee, Mike Tirico. Mike, welcome. Bob, you're breaking in another one." Here we go. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. So then fast forward a few years later, I'm in the studio with Chris and doing a show, and I got to work as like the second host, the sub-host on NFL Countdown, I think it was back then, whatever the shows were called. Um, his nickname is Boomer for a reason. He's the loudest individual ever. He's so loud and such a presence. But it was like walking around with, when we traveled together, it was like being with Elvis.
Yeah.
There's a true story of a Bills Super Bowl at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. We did the pregame show, and then we're going out. We're in a car. Russell Baxter was our research guy.
Yep.
Tom Jackson, Boomer, myself. I think that may have been the whole car, maybe one other person. Get a flat on the side of the highway, and there we are on the side of the road with Boomer and Tom Jackson. We're waiting for somebody to fix the flat. I go, here I am with Chris Berman and Boomer. Well, it's the way it happens with the Bills. Got to circle the wagons, right? So we got the flat fixed. We got there. The Cowboys had an incredible late second quarter. Boomer was disconsolate. He just wanted to see the Bills win once.
Felt
And
so bad. Sure.
maybe this will be the year that the Bills win. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe it is. And we'll think of Boomer, and we'll think of all the different times he predicted the Bills and the 49ers in a Super Bowl. It might not
Every
be
year,
that,
the
but
Swami.
it'll be something.
Swami says for the 10th year, it'll be the Niners and the Bills in the Super Bowl. You can count on it.
Beautiful. Mike Tirico, we went way over the time I asked you to give us. That was
Come
awesome.
on.
Thank you,
Just
man.
like
So good.
Just like our regular text exchanges. Can't wait to see you at the Super Bowl, pal, or somewhere down the line here. And thanks for all the GMFB mornings. You and that team just crush it. And like the thing you did on Tuesday, in the vein of Mark Andrews, of the guys who had great careers in their playoff moments, that's like vintage Schrager. That's something
appreciate it.
that like people don't do right now. I'm like, oh, Trey Junkin, I forgot about that, and it was
I love that you
really
watched.
cool. The history of football is so great, and you do
Mike, I
such
think
a
there's
good
still a
job.
place for it. And I say it to
Everywhere.
Mad Dog. I do Mad Dog Russo's show, and I'm like, I think there's a very small group of us left who care to actually use the platform to do it, but you're one of them. I think the history of football still matters.
But Peter, it does because it mattered to us. Like to hear the stories of the greatest game ever played in 1958.
58, Yankee
30
Stadium.
years later, 30 years later, for me to talk to people who are Bill Curry, to talk to Bill Curry about
Played
a
for
game
the Colts,
like that, right?
sure.
Like those things last with me forever. Now, as I am involved in playoff football and historic stuff as I get older, and hopefully, this generation has the technology, they'll be able to go back and look at it and see clips. But to keep it alive and to keep it fresh in people's minds is one of the many awesome things you do. So thanks for all you do for all of us,
appreciate it.
pal.
All right, dude. Thank you. You're the
you, bud.
best.
Right back at you. See you soon.